Morning, everybody. I tried to do this video yesterday, and it's not complex, but it's a little bit long to get there, and I failed twice. So sorry I didn't do an extra video yesterday, and here we go today. So yesterday, I reported on this global news story. It's an update to the Danforth shooter story, and it fills in some of the gaps. And yesterday, I was wondering, while I was reading the article, why they were trying to tie the Danforth shooter to being alt-right. Don't believe me? Here it is. I'll show you. We'll read it again together. So conspiracy DVDs found, and the link is in the description if you want to read it all for yourself, or you can watch my video yesterday where I read more of it. Conspiracy DVDs found. As police continue to search for a motive, the newly released details of the investigation show that police seized videos about Iraq and 9/11 conspiracy theories in Hussein's bedroom. The DVD includes films by American conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, such as The Road to Tyranny, which promotes the claim of government involvement in September 11, 2001 attacks. A popular right-wing conspiracist, Jones and his InfoWars show were banned from Apple, Facebook, and YouTube last year. Other DVDs found in the apartment were titled Loose Change and 9/11 in Plain Sight. Both also offer discredited conspiracies about Al-Qaeda's attacks on the United States. The types of documentaries police found are popular in the right-wing anti-authority movement, said Professor Barbara Perry, a hate crimes expert at the University of Ontario Institution of Technology. That's one of the common places where you'll find these sorts of conspiracy theories, she said. Conspiracies about the 9/11 attacks, which were orchestrated by Osama bin Laden and his terrorist organization, also persist in the Arab world and countries such as Iran. The search turned up two receipts for $99,300 for cash payments to the Abad Cooperative Housing Society in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. The receipts were labeled, quote, mosque fund, membership fee, transfer, pillars, and form fees. So the court document adds to the portrait of Hussein, who police describes as a troubled loner captivated by violence and explosions. Okay, he's got connections to this mosque. He's sending money every month to a mosque, but this alt-right winger is a lone wolf. What? Yesterday, I also said that they were conflicting reports because he had been arrested 2 days prior and there was no criminal charges. My point wasn't that he should have had criminal charges for the arrest. My point was that he was known to police since 2010 and has had many run-ins with the police since 2010. And it's interesting that through all of those accounts and the report that he was arrested 2 days ago for shoplifting, but was let go unconditionally, nobody was questioning that length of time, the how many laws was he breaking? And we've got, and I'll get to it in this video, we've got a pretty big body of evidence that some people under Canadian law are treated differently than other people under Canadian law. And that's an interesting and worrying discrepancy, right? And I've highlighted that difference in other videos, and I'm not going to go through the legal differences in this video. But there are many situations where cases have been thrown out, etc., because they would have had to deport the person who is involved. So there are differences. But the interesting part about this is, there are differences in how people are being treated under the law. And that's more what I was trying to highlight. And the fact that the newspaper was trying to push the fact that he had no criminal record right after listing that he had been arrested and was generally known as a lawbreaker, right? Like the police had been to his house since 2010 for disturbed person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's all this evidence, but at the end, no criminal record. So all of this time, he's been, this terrible person with police involvement, but he's never been arrested and charged formally, and it had it stuck. So it's such a weird thing. But anyway, I appreciate the criticism. Keep me honest, everyone. Okay, moving on. So why did they write this, and why did they try and tie him to being a right-wing conspiracist? Here, published the same day, CTV News, and CTV News tweeted this out three different tweets. Ralph Goodale says right-wing neo-Nazi white supremacist groups are an increasing concern. Are they, Mr. Goodale? Are they? Canada's Minister for Public Safety says right-wing white supremacists and neo-Nazi groups are increasing concern for and threat to Canadians. Ralph Goodale said the groups promote hate, which manifests itself in violent anti-Semitism or in other crimes. The van attack along Yonge Street in Toronto earlier last year had those kinds of roots, Goodale said, after a speech on national security at the University of Regina. 10 people died in April of 2018 when Alec Minisaran, allegedly drove a rental van down the busy stretch, mowing down pedestrians. And I scroll down. Goodale also used the example of 6 people murdered inside a Quebec City mosque in 2017 because they were at prayer. He said that the suspects were inspired by what they saw on the internet. They may have behaved themselves as singular individuals doing very evil deeds, but they were inspired by something, and largely that relates back to what they saw on the internet, Goodale said. Goodale said that Daesh, that's ISIS, and Al-Qaeda aren't the only sources of dangerous extremist violence, and it can come from any type of fanaticism. Internet providers have an obligation to make sure they don't provide a platform for spreading fear and hate, Goodale said. That's terrifying. He said the federal government is working with internet providers to eliminate the problem, and so far there's been, quote, pretty decent cooperation. What? And finally, he said, quote, they don't want to have a reputation that they are purveyors of that kind of nasty stuff, he said, but they have to do better. So this speech is on one side saying, hold on, it's not just Al-Qaeda and Middle Eastern terrorist groups or terrorism that's causing a threat in Canada. It's right-wing extremists too. See this April attack that killed 10? Totally, definitely right-wing extremists. And then in the same speech, he's saying those people were influenced by the internet, and internet service providers shouldn't be providing a platform for spreading fear and hate. No, internet service providers should be providing me an unfiltered connection to the internet. That's what they should be doing. That's their job. It is not their job to be deplatforming anybody. I should get full access to the internet, period. And there shouldn't be a government censor, and there shouldn't be internet provider censorship. And having a reputation to being purveyors of that kind of nasty stuff is not on the internet providers. That would be on the people in the website, and that would be on the people who are propagating those kind of things. I think that this is a slippery slope, and I think people have reported, rebel media mostly, about the slippery slope of these kind of talking points. The CRTC is asking for oversight of the internet in Canada, and that's dangerous. Again, not what this video is about, but these kind of talking points touch on that kind of stuff, and it's scary because they are talking about full censorship. They are talking about you have access to these websites and only this whitelist, or we are going to start blacklisting things we don't like, and I wonder what they're going to do. It's not confusing. Okay, so Mr. Goodale, this video is more about the Islamic terrorist attacks and the right-wing stuff, not the internet stuff. That's a whole other video. But here's the source that he's talking about, the 2018 public report on the threat of terrorism, on the terrorism threat to Canada. And I want to highlight 2 things. This report talks specifically about the Danforth attack, and we're going to go look down at RWEs, which are right-wing extremism. And it's just really the way these reports are written, it's like they're all drinking the Kool-Aid. These are the talking points they're trying to get out. It's so crazy. And I'll show you why it's crazy. Okay, executive summary of this report. Canada's terrorist threat environment remains stable. The principal terrorist threat to Canada continues to stem from individuals or groups who are inspired by violent Sunni Islamist ideology and terrorist groups such as Daesh, ISIS, or Al-Qaeda. Canada also remains concerned about the threats posed by those who harbor right-wing extremist views. The April 2018 van attack in Toronto is a reminder that violent acts driven by extremist views are not exclusively linked to any particular religion, political, or cultural ideology. Furthermore, Sikh and Shia extremism also remains a concern because while their attacks in Canada have been extremely limited, some Canadians continue to support these extremist groups, including through financing. At the time of publication, Canada's national terrorism threat level remains at medium, as set in early October 2014, meaning a violent act of terrorism could occur. Though Daesh's ISIS's territorial holdings in the Syria-Iraq conflict zone continue to decline, Canada has not seen a related influx in the number of Canadian extremist travelers, CETs, who have returned to Canada, nor does it expect to. Owing to several factors, such as lack of valid travel documents, denying boarding to aircraft destined for Canada, potential fear of arrest upon return, their continued commitment to ISIS or other groups, and having been captured while in Syria and Iraq, or because they have died, CET numbers abroad remain stable at approximately 190 individuals with a nexus to Canada, and close to 60 who have returned. In an effort to project strength and influence as a counter to its decreasing support and size, ISIS is resorting to more frequently to false claims of responsibility for acts of violence, including in Canada. In June 2018, Faisal Hussein fired on that busy Toronto neighborhood of Danforth. Daesh quickly claimed responsibility despite the total absence of any link between the attack and that group or any other terrorist group. However, now we find out there's $9,300 in mosque payments, right? Going to a Pakistani village. Isn't that connections? couldn't that potentially be tied back to terrorism or whatever? Why isn't somebody looking into that? It seems like they're ready to dismiss this stuff as quickly as possible. They run with the narrative, and it's very frustrating. So here is Gerald Butts trying to paint the leader of the opposition alt-right. And my whole point in this is, if they can label you alt-right, they can just ignore you. And that's the plan. That's the game plan, right? So Gerald Butts is one of the top aides to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and he's tweeting out, quote, "This is a flat-out lie being spread by the far right in Europe, the alt-right in North America, and now the leader of the Conservative Party." And this is in response to the CPC HQ tweeting out, "Justin Trudeau wants to give up Canadian sovereignty to an unelected international body. Say no to the UN Global Compact for Migration." And that's, I mean, if you've been watching my show, I did a big breakdown on the Global Compact for Migration. So it's interesting. They're trying to paint the Conservatives as alt-right. And I've seen this on the House floor too. Here's Justin Trudeau calling Andrew Scheer, well, he's saying he's disappointed. I know, awful, but here we go.
"Disappointing to see the Conservatives engage in peddling rebel media conspiracy theories while we work with the international community to protect our robust immigration system."
So all it takes is, so he says rebel media, and what he means by rebel media, here's the City News publishing the talking points that the Liberal government has paid for. It says, quote, "But Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accuses Scheer of using, quote, rebel media talking points, a reference to the controversial news website, which has been linked to the alt-right and has called the compact a means to normalize mass migration and silence media critics." Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I'm pretty on board with that statement. But it's interesting that the Prime Minister is trying to paint the Conservatives with the alt-right brush. Here's another example. I'm not going to have any sound, but I'll read it. This is where Justin Trudeau calls an elderly Quebec woman racist for asking about the 146 unbudgeted dollars that have gone to illegal immigrants. And that's just in Quebec. It's $1 billion unbudgeted across all of the different departments. In Ontario, 200 million in Quebec, and 540 million or 600 million for processing these people. And this is the 2018 number. This is an unbelievable amount of money for people who don't live here, don't pay taxes, and never will. It's unbelievable. And they don't qualify for any kind of qualifications in Canada, any kind of status in Canada. They don't qualify. It's that simple. 90% don't. Here's Justin Trudeau calling a Quebec grandmother racist for asking about money. "We demand that you refund the $146 million to the Quebecois that was given to illegal immigrants." Trudeau, "Ma'am, one of the most important things in politics is to listen." "But you're not answering my question," says the heckler. "But answer me, Mr. Trudeau." "Do you have something to say, madam?" "I want to know when you're going to refund the $146 million we paid for illegal immigrants." "Okay, ma'am, this intolerance toward immigrants has no room in Canada. This intolerance towards..." And then the crowd applauds. "Mr. Trudeau, are you tolerant towards true stock Quebecers?" "Ma'am, your intolerance, your racism has no place here. Your racism has no place here." "Excuse me, ma'am, I am proud Quebecois. I am a proud Quebecois." And he's being very rude there. And I've heard from the Quebec people that I've spoken to, the phrase he's using is rude. So it's interesting. He can call people right-wing. He can call them racist. He can ignore them if he paints them in that picture. "We're going to ignore your rebel media conspiracy theories, you alt-right leader of the opposition," right? Is that okay? Well, here is just a smattering, and there are more, of concerning headlines that don't have anything to do with alt-right. And I'm going to issue a challenge. I would love to have somebody do Canadian alt-right attacks. Canadian alt-right attacks, do a video just like mine and set it all up and show us, because I'm going to show you the concerning ISIS headlines right now. Here's one. "ISIS claims responsibility for Toronto shooting, raises questions of credibility." Now, the reason that this is concerning for me is this was posted a couple of days after the attack. ISIS had just claimed responsibility, and they dismissed it right away. They said, no way, not a chance. Even though the attacker, the Danforth shooter, had traveled to Pakistan, and they knew this. There was travels, and there had been money sent back to Pakistan. So whether there are terrorist connections or not, there are connections to a terrorist country. And so, not that that's enough for me, but there should be more there should be more information. And in light of the new information that was brought to bear yesterday, and I know that it was reported months ago, but for some reason nobody likes the rebel media. I wonder why, when the sitting government is maligning them in the House of Commons. And I mean, whatever the rebels done or not done, they do produce evidence. They do produce links and sources, and from what I've seen, they're not peddling conspiracy theories. They're peddling plausible theories that responsible people should be answering for. So in this one, the CBC is quelling fears of a terrorist connection. Not a chance, even though ISIS is claiming responsibility. In this one, the older brother of the Toronto mass shooter was facing drugs and weapons charges. If you don't know about this, he had, I believe it was 42 kilograms of fentanyl or carfentanil, and the amount was enough to kill 42 kilograms. The amount is enough to kill 50 million people. And the population of Canada is 37 million people. So he had enough carfentanil to kill more than the population of Canada. And that's just a drug and weapons charge. By the way, he's in a coma right now, probably for mishandling the carfentanil. Older brother of Toronto mass shooter facing drugs and weapons. Okay, so this is all the same one. I wanted to show you that, there's two sides to this story. Here's a January 16th article. Woman admits in court that attack was at Toronto area Canadian Tire was for ISIS. So she went into the store, and I mean, the link is in the description. I'm not going to go through it because I've got tons more stuff to get to. Here's one from, here's a tweet from a captured ISIS fighter, Mohammed Ali. Now he wants to come back to Canada after 4 years as an ISIS sniper, recruiter, treason, full stop. And he says, this is the same person. First Ottawa, then Quebec. Strike them just as they strike your brothers and your sisters. This is ISIS, right? Making threats. Interesting that it's all okay. Conservatives, here's another one. Conservatives grill Goodale about Canadian ISIS fighter shortly before he recants murder claim. This is an ISIS fighter who said that he shot somebody sniper style in the head, and he talked about it casually like he was telling you how to get to the grocery store. And he was like, man, it was crazy. The grocery store was so full. There was Pop-Tarts and like that. It was a very interesting podcast to listen to. Here's another one. The Toronto Sun, Canadian ISIS executioner who admitted to killings on podcast has Conservatives worried. Yeah, a self-proclaimed ISIS executioner reportedly living in Toronto has federal Conservatives worried. Yeah, and those are the same. The New York Times article is the same, is referencing the same one. I don't want to conflate it and make you think that there's more. Canadian member of Islamic State caught, but RCMP struggles to lay charges against ISIS fighters. Interesting. Here's a homemade bomb in Mississauga, Ontario restaurant blast contained nails, police say. And I don't know if this is an ISIS attack, but it's a bombing in Mississauga. Here's Douglas Todd. Trudeau government goes silent on Syrian refugees. Essentially, they lost here. But after more than 2 weeks of inquiries by Post Media, a media relations officer acknowledged the department has not produced any report in almost 2 years on the about 50,000 Syrian refugees now in Canada. So the government has imported these people under a huge program, a PR program, Prime Minister photo ops, the whole deal, going to places to meet them, and they lost them all. Here's the Global News reporting. Expert says Canada should bring back wives and children of ISIS. Yeah, just import the whole clan, all of them. And what are we going to do with them? Here's May 11th. Tory MP calls for action against self-confessed ISIS recruit living in Toronto. And this is potentially the same one as the New York Times article. BC ISIS supporter playing games by refusing to cooperate with his deportation. Yes, we need permission from you to deport you. Can we please deport you back to your country now? No, you know what? I quite like it here. I'm going to continue playing on my cell phone on the Wi-Fi. And could I have another halal meal, please? Thank you very much. Oh, it doesn't look like he wants to go home yet. Is that seriously how we are dealing with this? This person is an ISIS supporter and is refusing to be deported. Really? ISIS leader al-Baghdadi appears to call for attacks on Canada in a new audio recording. This is August 25th. Reporting. Ottawa mosque loses charity for promoting hate and intolerance. My goodness, this is August 10th, 2018. So we have organizations known to Canada who are promoting hate and intolerance in Canada, Islamic hate and intolerance within Canada, and they lose their funding. Yeah, you lose your charity status. RCMP rule out terrorism after truck injures pedestrians near hill screening facility. This was a vehicle ramming incident. And this is not all of the attacks. And there were even some overnight that I flagged and thought I could add to this video. And I'm not going to because I just don't have the time. And this video is already really long. But my point here is the news is protesting too much about these alt-right attacks when we've got a huge body of evidence that say ISIS is coordinating, calling for attacks, has fighters in Canada, and we're all pretending that the alt-right, the government is pretending that the alt-right are the biggest problem. These yellow vests are problematic. Forget the bombings, forget the vehicle rammings, forget the out-and-out shootings. Those had nothing to do with terrorism. Alt-right people protesting high taxes, that's the problem. Mr. Goodale, I'm not buying your bullshit. And I don't think the rest of Canada is either. My goodness, what an absolute waste of a minister, waste of a prime minister, and waste of a government. I can't wait to kick these imbeciles out in 2019 in October. It can't come fast enough. Holy cow. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please check out the Maxime Bernier People's Party of Canada at peoplespartyofcanada.ca. You might want him running the country, cleaning up this absolute mess that Justin Trudeau and Ralph Goodale are leaving. The safety is worse. Canadians have been duped into this globalist failure of a government. Get rid of them. Thanks for watching.